In most animes, the world has a built theme and core philosophy that the main character personifies. Luffy wanting to be the freest man of all and become the pirate king, whilst also fighting the government. Deku wanting to be the #1 hero and defeat all villains and make people smile. The fate of the shinobi world rests in the outcome of this battle. Whilst these shows have an amazing story and an awesome world, there's one thing that stands out to me: the issue of violence. Vinland Saga is a critically acclaimed anime and manga that explores the themes of violence, revenge, survival, and redemption. The story is centered around one person, and their character development, in my honest opinion, has changed the traditional protagonist archetypes. I have not read the manga, unfortunately, and I have only been watching the show, so I'll be talking about everything that happens from season 1 to what's happening right now in season 2. Vinland Saga starts off with the main boy, Thorfinn, who grew up in the snowy plains of Iceland. He gets to witness his father's death. He becomes solely driven by revenge and uses violence as a goal. Every time he completes a task, Askeladd will offer him a reward, and the reward is always his life. As the series progresses, we get to see Thorfinn sort of take a backseat and see the character development of Askeladd himself. First, we see him as a cruel, cunning character who uses any means necessary to reach his goal. But later, with his backstory and motivations, we understand why he does what he does. We also get to see the development of his relationship with Thorfinn, seemingly not being a father-son like duo, but he forces him to see the harsh realities of the worlds that they live in and tries to change his misguided and short-sighted view. All these lessons from Askeladd doesn't seem to take root, but comes to fruition at the end of season 1 when he tells him, and that's where we end. That's how season 1 finishes. It finishes amazingly. It finishes like a badass. And then we get to see the beginning of season 2. We are introduced to a shallow Thorfinn, a depressed Thorfinn. We are also introduced to this new character called Einar. Thorfinn begins to question his use of violence and sort of doesn't understand what his life means anymore, whereas Einar is a contrast to him. He wants to live but also serve as a complement to Thorfinn's character. He uses violence as a necessary tool to protect what he loves. Einar's belief and actions sort of sway Thorfinn's growth as a character. While Thorfinn begins to question his use of violence, Einar remains committed to it. We are literally introduced to him cutting down a tree, and in his words, he is trying to learn to protect his family and his home. King Canute is another important character who seems to play another important role in the later episodes of season 2. His character is portrayed to be a thoughtful and strategic leader who seeks to bring peace between two countries, England and Denmark. Also, he doesn't seem like the rightful, righteous king that he portrays himself to be. He kills his brother. He might start a civil war between a farm just for a piece of land. He uses violence to remove people from his plans because they don't serve a purpose to him. He is probably the complete opposite of what Thorfinn is, a person who is seeking to redeem himself. Canute uses violence and the bodies that he will pile to build a utopia, trying to prove himself to what his father doesn't believe he is. Both of these characters seem to have an effect on Thorfinn. For example, season 2, where Einar and Thorfinn are growing a piece of land where they can grow crops. It's going swimmingly until one of the freedmen doesn't like what he sees. He destroys the crops and Einar is furious. He goes seeking these men. If Einar hits a freedman, it will be very, very bad for him. So Thorfinn decides to take the brunt of what the repercussions will hold and punch the man who destroyed their crops. They get into a bit of kerfuffle and Thorfinn gets knocked out. He is thrown into this sort of dreamlike state where he is grabbed by the corpses and dragged down into this place that is considered Valhalla. I mean, in history, Valhalla for the Vikings was considered a paradise for them, but what we see is probably closer to hell. We get to see a familiar face in Askeladd, and he mentions that this place is the purest form of war. Thorfinn's tale seems to be talking about the dangers of revenge and violence in any form, whether it be in your culture where the Vikings is probably considered the most violent time in history, or to protect what you love in Einar or anything that he holds dear, probably his own life at this point. As well as learning that the use of violence is probably bad, he also gets to learn to forgive and redeem himself as a person, and vows to make an oath to never use violence again. Compared to your typical anime show, Vinland Saga has taken the completely different turn to what I was expecting, and I am so happy that it did, because season 1 is all about schemes and plots, and Askeladd, oh, he is my goat. We got to see Thorfinn jump off in places and do badass things with daggers, and it's all fun and games. But when we get to season 2, Vinland Saga as I like to call it, it's more built around the central theme of the use of violence and redeeming yourself no matter how far you've fallen. In an interview with the YouTuber Giga, author of Vinland Saga mentions that he builds characters for Thorfinn. Looking back at it, it starts to make sense. His father being a true warrior and what Thorfinn wanted to grow up to be. Askeladd teaching him that this world is cruel and will continue to do so if you indulge in it. Einar being the character that challenges his new world view and to express that violence is necessary to protect what you love. You can even take it a step further with the farmer's sons, one who has come back from war and loves the brutality of it, and one who hasn't even seen a battle a day in his life. Vinland Saga has changed the way we look at traditional protagonist archetypes by exploring the themes of revenge and violence, redemption and forgiveness. The show on the surface may seem all fun and games with plots and schemes, but it subverts that trope by showing the harsh realities of war, and no matter how minuscule or how big your ambitions or reasons are, lives are being lost on a daily basis. It teaches us that violence is not always the answer and something that we shouldn't trifle with. This show has left a lasting impact on me and probably the community itself, which is why it will always be a timeless classic. And that's how Vinland Saga changed anime.